When going to see a new movie in theaters, a lot of times we see the message, based on true events, flash across the screen. Many people roll their eyes, because most of the time, the percentage of true events that actually make up the movie are close to zero. The Conjuring is a critically acclaimed movie series that people underestimated when they saw this familiar message, but most people don't know of the true sinister events that inspired this popular film series, or the story of the woman that began the hauntings in the first place. The Perron family moved into their house of horrors in January of 1971. Rhode Island is a state that carries a lot of history, and with it, many spirits. Carolyn Perron was excited to be starting out a new life in a new home. The first days of her family's stay were like any other, unpacking boxes, cleaning up dust, and deciding on what color to paint the living room walls. Carolyn experienced all the joy that a new home had to offer, so much so that she paid little mind to the fact that she was constantly misplacing the broom. Carolyn worked tirelessly to get the house into shape. It seemed natural that she would be tired and forgetful, even though she could have sworn she finished sweeping up the kitchen. She would enter the room to find a new pile of dirt in the middle of the floor. She must have forgotten to sweep it into the dustpan. As time went on, the strange occurrences only became more frequent. Carolyn tried her best to ignore them, blaming them on her own absent mind. Carolyn could no longer ignore these strange piles of dirt on the floor, decorations falling off the walls, or the screeching sound of metal she would hear from time to time. She was forced to face it when her daughters made her blood run cold. They told of spirits in their bedroom, shaking their beds and turning on and off the lights. They were scared, and they needed their mom to protect them. Carolyn began combing through any resources she could get her hands on, trying to find any information about the people that lived in the house before her family. She found out way more than she had bargained for. The Arnold family had inhabited the old farmhouse for 8 generations before the Perrons took over. This family carried a horrible omen with them, as the amount of unusual deaths that occurred was unsettling, to say the least. Children had drowned in the lake nearby. One family member was murdered in the home, and others took their own lives. The amount of death that hung over this house was almost too much to comprehend. Carolyn's hands trembled as she read of the horrifying occurrences from the very floors on which she rested her feet. Her mind raced. What should they do now? How do they escape the spirits that stayed behind? Bathsheba Sherman was one about whom many rumors had been made during the early 1800s in Rhode Island, but few know her true story. Bathsheba was an envied beauty with a long line of suitors desperate for her hand. When she married, she truly believed that she had it all: beauty, a successful husband, a wonderful son, and a lovely home. But her reputation would soon change into one she could never escape. Bathsheba was babysitting a friend's son one afternoon. According to Bathsheba, she allowed him to play outside by himself, trusting that he would be safe, when she noticed a commotion outside. She ran to find out if the boy was okay, but he was already dead. She screamed and writhed in the pain of losing this child while he was under her care. What had happened to him? How would she explain this horrible event to his mother? How would she explain this to anyone who witnessed or would find out about this freak accident? The doctors that performed the boy's autopsy were skeptical of Bathsheba's intentions. Local doctors found and reported that the boy had died from being stabbed in the head with an object, to the point where the tool had entered his skull. Whatever happened, he was hit with such brutal force that his death was completely unavoidable. The only question that needed to be answered was this really an accident? Whether it was fortunate or unfortunate for Bathsheba still remains a mystery to this day. But the medical capabilities during the 1800s had no way of telling whether the boy fell and was impaled by this object or whether someone had forced it through his head. People that knew Bathsheba believed that she had to be involved. They never looked at her the same. Were they right? Or were they just jealous of the life that she had? Bathsheba was shunned by the people. Everyone was overcome with fear and discomfort at the fact of being near her. They began to speculate what had happened that day. Bathsheba must have gone crazy, and she probably still was. Who knew what else she was capable of? They became even more enraged when she was never even accused of being involved in the death of the boy. They feared for what she would do next. The only person that stayed by Bathsheba's side was her husband. Judson Sherman was a successful businessman who worked hard to provide for his wife and child. He loved being married to the most beautiful woman he had ever met, and everyone else thought so too. He couldn't bring himself to entertain the things that the others had said about the boy's mysterious death. He knew his wife, and he knew she was not capable of this kind of malice. It was a normal day of working for Judd, growing, harvesting, and selling produce from his farm. He was ready to return home and eat a big delicious meal that his wife would make, and spend time with his newborn son. He arrived home, ready to be greeted by his little perfect family. When he arrived home, the house was eerily quiet. He didn't hear his wife's footsteps through the front door. He didn't hear the baby's coos or cries. Something was wrong. He rushed into the house, cocking his head from left to right, calling out for his wife and baby. No reply. He walked up the stairs, quickening his step as his heart beat faster. He could feel in his bones, in his very being, that something was terribly off. When he arrived at the top of the stairs, he made his way to the bedroom. He heard the muffled cries of his baby, the softening voice of his wife. His heart stilled slightly, his breath slowing. Why was she in the bedroom at this hour? Maybe she was sick. Maybe the baby was sick. Did he need to call for a doctor? When he entered the room, Judson saw his wife Bathsheba holding his newborn son, who no longer cried. It was strange. It seemed as though his baby was always making noise. But there he lay, so still. He continued to survey the scene. Why was his wife holding a knife? As his mind adjusted to what he was seeing, he realized that the baby's silence was accompanied by a lack of movement, a lack of breathing in his lungs. His wife had stabbed his own child to death. Judson couldn't even muster a word to leave his paralyzed throat before his wife jumped up and ran out of the house, grabbing a rope and climbing a tree in their yard. It was then that Judson witnessed her taking her own life, claiming loyalty to the devil before she did so. Many dispute Judson's claims about what happened that day, but an alternative story has yet to surface, especially with the scarceness of historical record during the 1800s. It is believed that Bathsheba's spirit never left the home from that day on, tormenting whoever lived there into their own demise. When the Warrens became involved in the haunting of the Perrons, they quickly identified Bathsheba as the main accomplice in the sinister acts that were terrorizing the family. Lorraine Warren swears to the fact that everything that occurred in the movies she saw with her own eyes. She even worked as a consultant while the movie was being filmed, ensuring that the events were true to what she saw. The violent, gruesome acts that Bathsheba's spirit committed remain heavy, like rocks in the hearts of Warren, as well as the Perrons, as their lives are recounted day after day through the popular film. I recommend giving the movie a watch to see everything that occurred. We can't ignore the fact that stories can easily be dramatized as they are told again and again over time. The fact remains that the real Lorraine Warren testifies to the petrifying occurrences that happened to the Perrons, as well as the family after them. It all traces back to one woman, one that could never let go of the territory that was her home. Do you think Judson's account is real? Do you think Lorraine Warren really saw all the things detailed in The Conjuring? Let me know in the comments. Remember, if you want to see more cases like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification. Until next time.